Test, test, test. Can you hear
America, the land of the free. But just how free really are Americans? Today there are 6 million people under correctional supervision in the States. 6 million. That's enough to be America's second biggest city. It's more than those imprisoned in Stalin's gulags. So how exactly did America get to have such a large population behind bars? And where do they go from here? The statistics tell the shocking truth. America is 4% of the world's people, but 25% of the world's incarcerated population. When a country that prides itself as the leader of the free world has the highest incarceration rate, you know there's something amiss. The pressing issue of mass incarceration is undermining American authority and respectability on the world stage as well as at home. More people have been incarcerated in the last 20 years than the entire history of the United States, and the issue is intrinsically linked with race and class, as shown by the enormous racial disparity in the prison population. In truth, there are more black men in the grip of the criminal justice system in prison, on probation or on parole than there ever were in slavery. Now African Americans comprise almost 40% of the entire prison population. Once a land of opportunity, a place of incredible social mobility, African Americans who do not complete high school have a higher chance of being in prison than being employed.
Men are incarcerated now than were enslaved in 1850. The figures are stunning. They are sobering, eye-opening numbers. The latest estimates by the Bureau of Justice putting the number of imprisoned African-American men at more than 846,000. While black men account for roughly 6.5% of the U.S. population, they make up 40.2% of the prison population. And joining me now is Mark.
As the graph shows, the US prison population increases exponentially between 1980 and 2009 from approximately 300,000 to over 1.6 million, an increase of 400%. Many see President Nixon's war on drugs as a turning point. The campaign saw drugs become public enemy number one and targeted drug users as much as drug dealers. Thus, a public health concern developed into a criminal justice concern, all because of policy. The campaign was largely motivated by politics. Nixon preached law and order to appeal to voters who were unnerved by the social unrest of the 60s and 70s, a tumultuous time full of rising crime rates and rioting. Almost 20% of those incarcerated today are serving drug charges, and that's not including the violent felonies that surround the drug trade.
Hey, the Motor City is burning, y'all.
20% of those incarcerated today?
This has led some to conclude that the war on drugs has effectively created a new system of racial caste subordination that operates much like the old Jim Crow.
Why that increase in incarceration?
So what effect has this hardline tactic had on crime? While the increase in incarceration was responsible for a drop in crime in the late 1990s, today the impact is minimal. A 1% increase in incarceration leads to a microscopic 0.2 decline in crime. Begging the question, is it worth it?
Privatizing prisons, where many of them are paying prisoners $1 a day to make products that are sold on the open market. They're throwing unionized families out of work on the inside for slave labor. From the outside, they're throwing unionized families out of work for slave labor on the inside, making money off those they failed to educate properly. You have guns going in, education going out, jobs going out, death going into the inner cities of America. And we need a change in paradigm. And it's more cost efficient. Jane, that's 9 months I spent in jail. I'm told it costs $50,000 taxpayer.
The purpose of jail in society is something that has to be reevaluated. Each prisoner costs the state on average $100,000 per year. That equates to $75 billion cost a year. In the past 2 decades, the money the state has spent on prisons has risen at 6 times the rate of spending on higher education. So is the cost really worth it? Perhaps the question should be, what keeps the system in place? A growing number of American prisons are now contracted out as for-profit businesses to for-profit companies. The companies are paid by the state, and their profits depend on spending as little as possible on prisons and prisoners. Most of the private prison contracts in America require states to keep at least 90% of prison beds filled, or pay a penalty to private or for-profit corporations. So what can be done to solve this complex puzzle?
Incentivizing sending
nor high school diploma. And then we see the revolving door. There's nearly 70% recidivism rate. Those who go to prison come out, and within 18 months, 70% of them are back in prison because they are not rehabilitated or trained. And so when they come out, as you say, they have no skill, they have no real opportunity, so they go right back into the life of crime. It costs taxpayers more, and we are more at jeopardy. You know, I propose that we invest more on the upfront in education and on the backside in rehabilitation than we do just on punishment. Because if we...
Prison in America has become a business that needs to be countered with awareness, rehabilitation, and funding to education.
Which is not more tinkering, but it's to build a movement, a bottom-up, grassroots movement to end the system of mass incarceration.
Mass incarceration isn't going to solve itself. To achieve Dr. King's dream of an equal society, it must be tackled.